The three of us have all had the privilege of bringing a beloved animated character to the live screen. I played Cinderella, Naomi was Princess Jasmine,
and soon Hallie will join the club as Ariel in The Little Mermaid. Welcome, babe.
Thank you. All these characters hold such a special place in our hearts because animated films make up some of our most formative movie experiences as kids.
So many kids watch these movies over and over
and over and over and over and over and over.
I see some parents out there know exactly what we're talking about.
If you must blink, do it now.
Animation isn't just for kids and never has been. Animation, just like film and television, is a medium, not a genre. You might know that, but you know who doesn't? The general public. The way the public perceives animation is through the lens of other mediums, as opposed to viewing it as its own medium. And so they think of animation as a genre instead. An animated movie is a kid's movie, and to them an animated show or cartoon is a kid's show or late-night cartoon, but wait.
Hold it. What's going on here?
Late-night cartoons aren't for kids, they're comedy shows for adults. True, however, that's still a specific type of genre for a specific type of demographic that your average person will only be thinking of because of the word animated. If you just ask them to think of a TV show without animated in front of it, who knows what they'd be thinking about? It could be anything.
You and me will be the best team.
But if you say animated TV show, their brain likely goes to one of two places. But what does all of this have to do with subverting expectations? Animation isn't just for kids. Okay, whoop-de-doo, we get it. What's the point? To answer that, let's start by breaking down how the public perceives animation specifically by demographic. So first, obviously, we've got children's animation. Then, of course, its counterpart, adult animation. And then there's young adult animation too. And finally, we have animation for all audiences. At least, that's the reality of it. How does the public perceive it? Well, for starters, young adult animation, that shit doesn't even exist because I have never heard those three words in that order come out of an average person's mouth. But then in a way too, the case is the same for animation for all audiences. You might be thinking, yeah, what is that anyways? I mean, it sounds pretty self-explanatory, sure, it's an animation for everybody, but why is that its own category? Aren't those just the animated kids movies that are actually good? No!
What?
If you thought that, you just fell into my trap!
Boom! I gotcha!
Animation for all audiences in reality is a wholly different thing, but that thought that so many people have of, isn't it just a good kids show, just goes to show how deeply ingrained the idea that animation is a genre meant for kids is in our culture. Before we keep going, I need to address what I just said and make a big fat disclaimer. I just said our culture, but really the culture that I'm referring to is my own culture, American culture.
Ding dong! It's America, motherfucker!
Because it is a very Western perspective to view animation in this way. The rest of the world does not have this strange aversion to animation that we have here in the States.
Have you ever seen a good animated film for mature audiences?
What the fuck
is that?
Holy shit.
I mean, take anime, for example, a massively successful and popular art form that is loved and celebrated as part of mainstream pop culture. And it's animated. It is the rule, not the exception to it. Yet, for so many of us here in the not-so-good old US of A, widely celebrated animation is reserved for the one or two, quote, good ones every year, which tend to be the family movies that companies like Disney or Pixar pump out like they're working on a McDonald's drive-thru.
Hello?
Yes, welcome to McDonald's. Can I help you?
I want a hamburger. No, a cheeseburger. I want a hot dog. I want a milkshake.
You'll get nothing and like it.
And that's not to say that these films are bad. Frankly, that's rarely the case. It's not always the case, but rarely the case. However, the problem is that there are a lot of them. Similar to how directors like Scorsese are arguing that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is taking away theater space from new and innovative films produced by independent filmmakers, so too are the big animation companies taking away opportunity from the general public to be exposed to all types of animated works, not just the ones meant for a family audience. These companies, which have practically monopolized the medium, are mistakenly understood by many to be the sole providers of any animated show or movie. And of course, Mr. Mickey Mouse and friends, they're family men, because that's where the money is, so when the animated films and TV shows that the general public are exposed to are for that family demographic, their perception of the medium of animation as a whole gets twisted. Suddenly a whole entire medium, just the same as film or television in its ability to tackle any type of genre, story, or theme gets shoehorned into one genre for one demographic. So when it comes to the public perception of these 4 categories, the animation for all audiences category gets swallowed up by the children's animation category, but keeps the latter's title. Thus, the animated films and shows that, when being created, are deliberately intended to be enjoyed by all audiences, kids and adults alike, end up getting labeled as good kids movies, or good for an animated show. Because for some reason there's this weird unspoken idea that because something is created solely for a child's entertainment, whether that's actually the case or just perceived to be, somehow that movie or show is lesser. And so when there is something good, it's seen as a surprise. Speaking of surprises, if in the eyes of public perception, children's animation has basically absorbed the animation for all audiences category, and young adult animation is out there floating off in the plane of non-existence, where does that leave adult animation? And how does this relate to animation's ability to subvert expectations? Well, adult animation still exists, only it exists in the dark, massive shadow of children's animation. In terms of the amount of media produced comparatively, the category of adult animation is laughably small, so its chances of being seen are even smaller. And in terms of what types of animation exist in this category, well, I use the word dark to describe that shadow that adult animation exists in for a reason. Because in the eyes of the public, that evil connotation applies to the media that lies within this category. So let's talk about how that came to be. This idea of animation being limited to a wholesome family genre has existed practically ever since the medium entered the mainstream. Of course, the first animated works weren't necessarily like this, but we're talking about the mainstream. The first experimentations with the medium, just the same as with live action, weren't these massive monetary or cultural success stories. But with time and technological advancement, we soon saw cartoons and animated features produced by Disney, Warner Bros., and other production companies that would launch animation into the eyes of the average American family, especially once household televisions became a commonplace thing.
Sold!
Though during that era of the introduction of the household television, there also existed the Hays Code. The Hays Code was essentially a big long list of ethical no-nos put in place that limited both live action and animated media. And this only makes the misconception around animation being meant for kids make even more sense. Just as it was getting ahead of steam, it was limited by what types of stories it could tell, and thus the audiences that it could tell them to. But the Hays Code eventually ended, and it's not like live-action media always stayed so squeaky clean, so why didn't the same thing happen with animation? Well, it sort of did. The public's misconceptions about the medium of animation, only further perpetuated by the production code's restrictions, didn't go unnoticed, especially not by the animators themselves. So some now infamous few began pushing the envelope, and I mean really, really pushing it. It seems like if they weren't gonna make something that could be watched by kids, they said fuck it, and made something that would make an appearance in those kids' nightmares. How do you think the American public reacted to that shit? I'd say probably like this.
It's shameless, disgusting. Avert your eyes.
So ever since those early days of animated insubordination, adult animation has existed in the shadow of its more wholesome counterpart, and the public has tried to distract themselves from its abhorrent repulsivity, even though it isn't always so crass and lewd and never has been. However, this is part of what gives animation the potential to subvert expectations. That's right, I've arrived at the point. Because adult animation is stacked up against this powerhouse that is animation for all audiences, or children's animation, adult animation has to compete in an uphill battle just to get the chance to be seen. And even then, when it does get that chance and it beats the odds and it makes its way into the public eye, it is then forced to compete with the audience's preconceptions of what an adult animation is even capable of being, which to them is those reprehensible countercultural works of the past. However, if an animated work meant for adults isn't one of those, and it actually sees the light of day, then the general viewer is bound to be surprised and their expectations bound to be subverted. And what's even more special about this phenomenon is that, unlike live action, the adult animations that make it into the public eye don't have to put in any extra effort into pulling the rug out from the viewer's feet. If they want to subvert expectations, they've already done that just by checking those two boxes. Let me make this make a little bit more sense. To do that, let's look at an example of subverting expectations in live action. Parasite is a film that takes special care in its writing to establish a premise, characters, and tone that lead everyone to believe that the movie is going in one direction, and then there's a ring at the doorbell, and holy fuck, there goes the rug. On the other hand, in the case of the new animated Netflix series Arcane, it definitely establishes that it's a little dark and grimy in its first few episodes, sure, but nothing too intense. I mean, The Hunchback of Notre Dame was a little dark too, right? And that's a kid's movie, right? I mean, it's Disney, so this will probably be just like that, because that's what I've seen before. That was just a good kids movie, and this will be just a good kids show, and then all of a sudden... The important difference is that Parasite, an Oscar-winning live-action film, was only able to subvert expectations on the basis of plot, whereas Arcane, as an animated work, is able to subvert expectations on the basis of content. This phenomenon is just a beautiful byproduct, inherent to the medium of animation, and only the medium of animation as a result of the misguided assumptions that American culture bestows upon it. And so, unless things change in our culture, the medium of animation will forever and always have something that the medium of live action never will or even can have. And I think that's pretty fucking cool.
I always say that when our fans and our audiences put their kids to bed at night after watching Pinocchio or Dumbo or Little Mermaid, they're probably not going to tune into another animated movie. They want something for them.